Hey there, and welcome into University of Hoops. I'm Blake Atwell, and we are the show that gives you an inside look at the people making everything happen on your favorite basketball team. Today, we are so excited to welcome Weber State University assistant coach Jorge Ruiz. Coach Ruiz, welcome to the show, man.
Welcome, man. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, absolutely excited to get into not only your journey but Weber State. Obviously, anybody that knows basketball knows that's where Dame Dollar came from. So it's a one of those programs that is definitely on the minds of a lot of people as a place that makes the most of the resources you guys have and having a player come out of that program of that stature is pretty crazy when you think about it. And Dame, not only because of where you guys are located on the Northwest, but Dame being from Oakland and everything kind of has just elevated not just Weber State, but a lot of that area of the basketball world. So excited to get into all of that. But before we get into Dame and to your journey and all of that, want to just start by congratulating you guys. I know you guys just took home some hardware in the Arizona tip off. Just as the season is really young and all of that. How big was it for you guys to play well in that? And what's the message to the team now as you guys kind of move forward with that hardware?
It was huge. It was huge for our team. We're a young team. We're learning kind of who we are. A lot of the guys we returned, they're playing different roles than what they played in the previous years. Last year we had Dylan Jones, who was a NBA first rounder. But even like Stephen Van Planken carried a lot of load for us. We just had like a lot of older vets. So this year's vets kind of meshing with the transfer guys that we brought in, Miguel Tomley, being a first team or all conference level guy. Him, Nigel Burris, who was freshman of the year in this league. They're all just kind of mixing and mashing together, learning how to play with each other. And I think Arizona was really good for us to just find some rhythm and just keep growing. We've had a really strong non-conference to start. We played a really tough UC Irvine team here at home. We've played Oregon State, we've played Nevada, just some really tough, really good mid-majors that have given us a good test and kind of exposed what we needed to get better at. So we're excited to keep growing, and we got two big games again this week. It feels like every week we have two really good ones. One at home here at North Dakota State on Wednesday, and then at North Dakota on Saturday. So we're excited about all that.
Nice. Appreciate you giving us some detail there, and now kind of moving forward to you and what your role is on the staff. What's your day to day like now that the season is in full bore as an assistant?
Day to day from for me personally kind of changes a little bit. I'm on the court usually in the mornings. We have a young freshman who gets at it pretty early, around 7:38 every morning, and so he usually gets me up and out of bed pretty early. But I'm on the gym floor from about like 8 to 11. I'm usually trying to get video with guys in between like 11 to 12:30, and then we practice at 1. So that's usually kind of my 8 to 3. And then we usually have a staff meeting after practice of like what we saw, what we think we need to improve on and work on the next day. And then we usually kind of meet on it in the morning and put practice together, whatnot. So it kind of changes a little bit. Like Wednesday's my scout, so I came in a little bit earlier, around like 6:30, kind of watch some film, make sure I got all my thoughts together and kind of gathered all.
Coach, so I know that you got your kind of coaching start, if you will, with Arizona State and then you've been at Weber State since 2018. I'm curious, since you got to Weber State in 2018 up to now, how have you seen things develop? And I ask this question from the perspective as it relates to the industry and the landscape of college basketball changing so much, right? Because and it's
Yeah.
why I love talking to coaches like yourself because um it's so different than it was even like in 2020 or 2018. Like we're in a whole new, the landscape is so different. So what has that been like, and how have you guys done your best to handle how rapid things have changed?
When I first got here, freshmen were like the hot thing. Everyone recruited freshmen, right? You want to get like the best freshman class possible. And Weber State was like a well-oiled machine. Like they'd finished their recruiting class really early. They had some great assistants here in Dave Merritt, Garrett Lever, Coach Duff, who was with Coach Ray since day one. And so they would get like their freshman class done. Like I think I showed up on campus sometime in August, like late July, early August, and they needed like one or two to get. Like they were like finishing up their freshman class, and it was the same thing the next year. Like we finished it up in about August or September. Um, so the whole dynamic and world changing basically of like the transfer portal, guys getting their COVID year. It's been a completely different dynamic now. Like getting older is different. Um, and I think it was like that where we took freshmen my first 2, 3 years, but then we had a year where things didn't work out as great. It wasn't probably the one, it was the losing year we've been here. Um, and we went transfer portal route and got old quick. We took like Isaiah Brown, JJ Overton, Sigu Jawara, just a bunch of different kids from different programs that we really believed in. And it was like an immediate turnaround. But now kind of Coach Duff really enjoys the player development side. So we try to take like 3 or 4 freshmen we really believe in, probably kids that we maybe wouldn't have gotten if it wasn't for this transfer portal era. And we pour and invest into them and try to keep them. We think we could still retain our guys, by loving, caring, and coaching them, and them kind of knowing that it's a good situation here.
Coach, what do you love about coaching at Weber State, and what do you think makes it uh, a unique place for kids out there that maybe know what it is because of Dane, but don't know, much else?
Yeah, normally, I mean, everyone has a decent feel. Like you mentioned Weber State to a basketball player, they're like, okay, Dame Lillard went there. But it's really cool to kind of just show them the tradition and like the legacies of guys that have been through here. I think Dylan Jones obviously last year, but then you have Jarek Harding who's killing it in the ACB, Jeremy Singlin, Scott Bamforth, Joel Bollenboy, like all those guys have played at the highest level of Europe and made millions. And so we have a few European guys on our team now, I think about 7 or 8, and they're like really familiar with these guys because they're like, yeah, I grew up watching them. Like I've seen Weber State. So I think that kind of sets it apart is the legacy and the tradition. But also just I think when kids come from the West Coast, they see our situation and they realize like, okay, this is a place where I could really grow and invest. And you have all the tools you need. Like, yeah, maybe we don't have the glitz and the glam of the Power Five, but like I think you have all the tools. We're really fortunate that our administration gives us what we need to succeed.
Absolutely. Now I want to move over to a little bit more about you, Coach. And as we touched on earlier, I know you went to Arizona State, kind of got your start there, and now have been at Weber State for a few years. But I know you're also from Southern California, which of course is such a basketball hotbed. So I'd love for you to just take us through, how you got into basketball and what spoke to you about the coaching side as you, sort of progressed on your way from high school to Arizona State and then beyond.
I mean, I just grew up around it like my whole life. Like I was from a basketball family. It's actually something that like when I'm recruiting kids, I kind of get excited when kids are from basketball families. Because you kind of just grow up around it. And that's kind of where I was. Like you said, Southern California is just a basketball hotbed. I think everybody plays it in some sort of a aspect there, like even if you don't play, you play a little bit. Um, but I think, kind of seeing it all come together. I actually went to Arizona State because my high school, Rancho Cucamonga, we went to Arizona State's team camp for like 2 or 3 years. And Jason Ludwig, the director of basketball operations, had a pretty good relationship with my high school coach. And he was like, "Hey, I was like, I want to do this. I want to like be part of basketball at the Division 1 level." And I wasn't talented enough. I probably thought I was, but I wasn't. But Jason Ludwig kind of gave me that opportunity to be like, "Hey, we have manager roles," and I had no idea what that meant, what it really looked like. But I knew that it put me around the team and it put me, part of something. Um, and then when I got that opportunity to go to Tempe, I kind of ran with it. It was a opportunity that I didn't know maybe how blessed I was and fortunate to really get it. But kind of looking back at it, man, it was a really blessing in disguise to get that opportunity to go be a manager and then kind of learn and grow from there. And that staff, I still talk to most of those guys till this day. And we had Coach Herb Sendek, Stan Johnson, Barrett Peary, who I just got to talk to this last weekend. But even Jason Ludwig, like there was so many people that are still like influential to me that I met when I was like 17 years old.
What are some of the biggest lessons you learned specifically when you were at Arizona State, and what roles did you hold there? And what are some of those best pieces of advice that you got from the major players there that you just described?
I think my biggest thing is I thought I worked hard, and then going to Arizona State, seeing Coach Sendek's passion, and then seeing Coach Bobby Hurley's passion, that next year, and like I thought I really worked hard. Like I thought, like I was like, man, like I'm a hard worker, and then I realized like there's a different gear to this. Like like there's a level of commitment that I think comes with like working in college basketball, and those guys made me really figure out if I wanted to do this or not. I was fortunate to where I was just a student manager. Like I didn't have, I don't want to spin it to where I was, hey, calling the shots or nothing like that. But I was fortunate that they put me in the video room and I got to learn like, how this kind of all operates. I always tell anybody who's kind of learning or wanting to come into the business, like learn video. It's like the one real skill that can like teach you a job. We can all rebound, we can all pass. But like video is like the one skill that translates to any single staff. Like no staff is like, hey, we have enough guys that could do video. Like we're good. Like every staff, I think, wants someone who's competent themselves, but also like, hey, what can you provide? What can you help with others on the video? So I think that was a huge, huge blessing for me, like in how I was given those responsibilities.
Gotcha. And then what took you to Weber State in 2018? How did that happen?
So I had transferred over to Grand Canyon. I had worked with Rashawn Burno at Arizona State. And he worked with someone, David Moats, assistant coach David Moats. And they had a connection, and I was actually looking for some GA jobs, and a volunteer video position came up here. And I looked in, I was like, I don't know if I can afford a volunteer spot. I'm kind of from like a single parent household, volunteering was kind of impossible for me. And Coach Burno was like, "No, you're gonna do it. Like this is coming up. David Moats is gonna help you get this. Like you're gonna do this." And then I kind of knew some people that, David Merrick knew Chris Crevalone, who was at Grand Canyon. Phil Beckner knew Coach Duft, and so I kind of like sprinkled in, figuring out that these guys were really good guys, and I was like, "Well, let's see if I can figure it out here in 9 or 10 months."
Got it. Got it. So you've had a few different stops now. Um, and I know you're still in that first chapter of your coaching career. But just overall at your stops, what are some big things that you've taken away that you would then sort of impart to others that want to get into the business as pieces of advice, you think?
Um, I think first of all, like you got to be relentless in like your pursuit of it. You're gonna hear no a lot. Like people are gonna tell you it's really hard. You probably already know that already, but like just be relentless in like your pursuit. Make sure you know you want to do this. And if you know you want to do it, then pursue it with everything you have. There was some times where I was like, man, like maybe this wasn't the right decision. I'm a volunteer. Bills are stacking up, and there's opportunities where you're like, well, this makes a little bit more money. But it was something that I knew I wanted to do, and I knew that like the return on investment for me, um, I love the relationships that like I get to build with guys. I really find that like that's kind of my passion. And that's my fulfillment. And so I knew that I really wanted to be around guys, especially, freshmen, sophomores that come in here and they're trying to find their way. Um, and maybe some kids that are just from tougher situations. I like being a part of their journeys and kind of helping them guide their way and be like how to manage the college lifestyle a little bit.
Once you have broken into it and you are relentless and you have the qualities that you discussed, how would you best recommend people network and build those relationships in order to move up the ladder?
Just be genuine. Like I think networking sometimes can get a little stale. Like be genuine. Reach out to people, like ask real questions. I think try to invest into people's like journey. I think people want to tell you about themselves, so figure out what made them tick, what kind of, what they felt like their break was. I think this show kind of does a really big part of that. And I'm always interested in like what kind of made people make the decisions they made. And I reach out to people sometimes, just dry reach out and be like, hey, I saw you did this podcast or you made this comment. I'd love to talk to more about that. Be genuine, have genuine interest, and really try to like dig into what makes people think the way they do.
What are some of the biggest challenges you've faced along the way here? And just in general, obviously, as you touched on a little bit, like in being relentless and things like that, it's a business that has a lot of challenges and has a lot of rejection and roadblocks built into it to weed out people that don't want it as bad as you talked about. So what have some of those roadblocks been for you, and how would you then advise people to, I guess, sort of face and overcome those challenges in their journeys?
Personally, I think for me, my journey, one of the biggest roadblocks or just issues that came up was I was always young. Like I was younger than some of our players when I came here to be the video coordinator. I think my first year I was younger than like four of the players. And my second year I was still younger than two of the guys. Um, so just getting able to like having them to respect you a little bit. But I think some of that comes down to the way you carry yourself. If you carry yourself as a professional, like they'll respect you as a professional, and also a little bit sweat equity. Like I think those individual workouts and they see how much time and preparation you put into them, especially when you start coming with like clips and like, hey, this is an example of like how you should do it, or this is where I can see you improving, and like you show clips of their game, they start respecting the investment. So I think that was a way that I kind of fought that roadblock a little bit. And then I was fortunate to those guys then start allowing me to, help out with their development a little bit.
What's your why, coach, behind why you're doing what you're doing and why you want to, continue to do in the future?
My why is definitely like the relationships and the growth and the development. Um, Personally, like myself, I've been blessed with really good mentors and people to lead me. But now I want to be that for like the players and like those guys coming in, typically like a kid from my journey probably doesn't go to college, or probably just doesn't go to like Arizona State from the jump. And I had some learning curves for sure that, I think Coach Barrett Peary, Stan Johnson, Jason Ludwig, Justin McLean, like those guys, they taught me a lot my first year. And I like became a man, in the way of like I had to think different. I thought kind of like a little inner city kid a little bit. And they taught me like how to kind of be a man and be like, hey, sometimes you got to take these losses to the chin. Um, and so I think that type of stuff is really my why of like, I want to be that for the next generation. A kid who probably isn't supposed to go to college, but is going to college because he's on a basketball scholarship or is just in a whole different world. Coming to Ogden, Utah, I want to be the person that, helps them develop and kind of feel their comfort and then start being like, okay, now you can grow. Like now you're getting invested into and poured into. And so now you can grow and really flourish into who you are.
You talked about relationships and player development, coach, and I would be remiss if, because you coach at Weber State, if we didn't go into Damian Lillard a little bit. So the first thing I just want to ask you is give you a chance to tell our viewers like what kind of relationship have you had with him and what, since you've gotten Weber State in 2018, and what is his, I'll just start there, like what's his involvement with the program and off seasons and things like that. And then we'll give you a chance to talk about it more from there. But just at a base level, what is your involvement or relationship been to him since you have spent these last few years with the program?
He's been awesome, man. Like he comes back every year. He spends about like 10 to 12 days out here, about like 2 weeks. But like just what he brings around these guys. Um, he shows our younger guys immediately like how serious this is. I've been around a few guys who have been like all-star superstars, but like when you see how hard he works, you're like, okay, like I get what makes this guy a little bit different. Um, and just the like professionalism, like when those guys are able to see it um firsthand and they see like, okay, I don't want to go too much into his resume, but he's like a 2 a day, 3 a day type of guy, and you're like how well he plans out his days, and just how detailed he is when he puts in that work, like you're just like, okay. So I think his relationship has been awesome here. He comes back every year. He mentors a lot of these guys. He was big in Dylan's development and just kind of even big in Blaze Street's development. Blaze was able to kind of reach out, connect with him, ask him some questions. But it's just something that's like invaluable. We can kind of tell him, but I think it kind of hits a little bit different when it comes from Dame. Um, and just this community, like Dame Lillard in this community. If you have like a signed Dame jersey, that's basically currency in Ogden. And so I think his relationship here, he really holds a lot of pride coming from a mid-major university and doing what he did here. It's been special.
And you talked about the impact that he has on the players, but I'm curious for you personally, coach, as a coach, what are some of those things that you picked up just by being around him and um especially as a younger coach, what are some of those things that you want to kind of emulate and flip into things you can use on the coaching side?
I've been fortunate to like help out with like some of his skill development. Phil Beckner's been someone who's really actually mentored me a lot. Um, and that's actually a skills trainer, sorry. So Phil Beckner's been with Dame since his time here in Ogden. And so I think just being able to assist in those workouts and like the confidence he gives you to be like, he wants you to push him. Like you would think, I'm filling in doing a workout. He wants to get coached like by everyone. He wants you to like tell him like, hey, I don't think your body's tight in that shot. Like he wants the truth. And so just like the confidence of a guy from that level wanting to be coached and wanting to be pushed, you start kind of seeing you're like, okay, like that's what the real dudes want. Like the real dudes don't want to just get let off the hook and like go through these reps. Like he's a real guy and he's like, what do you see? You know? And so it's kind of cool just to like get that self-confidence a little bit of like he wants to see what your eyes are seeing.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate you giving us some Dame dimes, some Dame dollars right there, coach. Some
Yes, sir.
some info about that. Is there anything else before we get out of here that any last pieces of advice or anything you would want to tell our viewers and listeners out there?
If you're trying to get in it, just keep trying, man. Like you only got to hear yes once. I remember my senior year as a manager, I was trying to get a GA job. TJ Benson and Chris Crevalone were like, email everyone, like literally make a list, email everyone, be genuine on your list, like dive into people. And I heard a lot of no's. Like I probably heard like 200 and something no's, but I needed to hear just one yes and just stay with it. Like if this is something you feel genuinely passionate about, make sure you're in it for the right reasons. Because it will expose like if you're not, but just stay with it. Like I think if you're in it for the right reasons and you love it, like you'll pan out in it.
Absolutely. That's a Weber State assistant coach, Jorge Ruiz. Coach Ruiz, thank you so much for joining University of Hoops.
Thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure. It was awesome to kind of chat it up. And so I appreciate you, man. It was cool to connect with another California guy.
Hey, absolutely. Got a rev for SoCal, especially since I'm out here in freezing New York out here with my beanie now. It's like 20 degrees outside, so we gotta always rep out here.
Yeah, the
Anyways,
weather's a little different.
it is a little different, but I like having the seasons. I miss the palm trees and the 70 degrees for sure of SoCal, but I like having the seasons. It keeps you on your toes a little bit.
No question. I'd never experienced fall until I came to Utah. I always tell people, and I'm like, you see those colors change. I'm a far away from California.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you so much again, Coach, and thank you to our viewers and our listeners for tuning into another episode of University of Hoops. We'll be back next week with another interview.